So for number 14, it's not hard, but it is a good bit of writing and you have to stay organized. Okay. So that 3 is going to just hold on a second. And then because the x minus 4 is squared, it's a twin. What do you put? Because it's squared, you're going to write it twice. Okay. So x minus 4 minus 7. So I love that you guys were working so diligently. I really do. That was awesome. But please come back to 14 because I need to make sure your answers are right. It won't help you to study if they're not right. So again, that 3 is just going to hang on a second. We're going to just distribute everything to each other. X times x squared. Good. The outsides give you a minus 4x. The insides give you a minus 4x. So together that would be what? Good. Negative 8x. And then negative 4 times negative 4 is 16. All right, almost there. Now what? What are we going to do with that 3 that was waiting so patiently? Distribute. Good. So that'll be 3x squared minus 24x plus 48. Oh, minus 7. I'm going to just erase and change it so I don't have to write the whole thing all over again. 48 minus 7 be 41. You can write the whole thing all over again if you want to, but not really. All right, this is your fencing problem. You have 240 feet of fence to make a rectangle. One side is going to be against a lake. Oh, so instead of a barn this time, I made it a lake. All right, there's the water for the lake. Here's our fencing. And you have to label the sides as something. I usually just go with X and Y. You can call it whatever you want. I would pick X and Y. Now let's make a statement for the 240 feet of fencing. If I add all the, remember perimeter from geometry class? All right, so it'll be X plus 2Y equals, perfect, thank you. And then we need to write out area because we want maximum area. How do you get the area of a rectangle? Yeah, sides times each other, so X times Y. Now you have to substitute. This is a great big bunch of algebra. Which variable is easier to get by itself here? X, because it doesn't have a coefficient, all right? So we're going to do minus 2y minus 2y. You're just getting X by itself. So 240 minus 2y. And you're going to take that and plug it in for X or substitute it in for X in the area equation. The reason why is so you can just have one variable. You're getting rid of one of the variables. So this would be 240 minus 2y times y. And then you're like, when does it end? We just need to distribute that y. What would that give us if you distribute that? Minus 2y squared. I'm going to actually write it the other way around though, so that it's in the order with the y squared first. So I'm going to put negative 2y squared plus 240y. If you're like, I didn't want to do that, Miss Cole, that's fine. It's actually personal preference. I just like it better written that way. Now we want the center. Do you remember the cookie problem, the Girl Scout cookies, and we raised the price, but we lost customers? Okay, I gave you a little formula for that. It's negative b over 2a. You feel like you're going to forget that? Most of you knew the quadratic formula. It's the beginning part of the quadratic formula, right? So when you look at this, which number is b? Yeah, that's why I wrote it that way. So it's negative 240 over 2 times a, which is negative 2. It'll always come out that they're both negative, and then the negatives will cancel. So that's negative 240 over negative 4. And so what do we get for y? This was y for this one because we had y's in this equation. 60. Do you remember me telling you I'm going to make the numbers come out nice so that you won't need a calculator? Like I will design it like that so that you will not need a calculator. All right. Now, if y is 60, come back over to your picture. If these are both 60 and you have 240 feet of fencing, what's left for this side? 120. And then final answer is the area. You have to multiply these together. You won't need a calculator because they both end in 0. Here, let me just cover up the zeros. What's 12 times 6? 72. And then just put both of the zeros back. Let me say that again. If you cover up the zeros, 12 times 6 is 72. Then put both of the zeros back. So it's 7,200. And what are the units for an area? Honestly, that feet squared is more important to me really than any of the rest of it. I want you to know area is two-dimensional, feet squared. All right, and then we have a couple of these rocket science problems. Do you remember in T minus 3 seconds? Okay, objects go up and come back down. It's literal rocket science. Okay. So for this one, we have time in seconds, height in feet. Find the time when the ball is at its maximum height and what it is. It's negative b over 2a. So what is b in this equation? 10, good, negative 10 over 2 times a. So what's a? Negative 1, good. So that's negative 10 over negative 2, which would be 5 what? Seconds. 5 seconds is the time. How do I get the actual height in feet? Well, I'm going to take 5. Do what with it? Plug it in. All right, ready? I'm going to talk you through it. 5 squared, 25. Oh, but it's actually negative 25 plus 10 times 5, 50 plus 9. So let's see what that'll give us. Negative 25 plus 50 would be 25. And then 25 plus 9, 34 feet. So do your little negative b over 2a to get the time, plug it back in to get the feet. I will make the numbers like that where you don't need a calculator. We were able to get through it without one. All right, B, find the time when the ball hits the ground. Hey kiddos, if it's on the ground, how far in the air is it? 0. You're going to take the whole equation and set it equal to 0. Was I telling you guys how one year I had a class just completely resist learning how to do this? So I stuck one on every test forever. It's not have that happen. Now, if it equals 0, and only if it equals 0, you can get away with this. I'm going to divide everything by a negative 1. Why would I do, like, why would that benefit us in this problem? What's that going to do that helps us? Yeah, it's going to make this part positive. Good. Okay, so everything's just going to flip-flop its sign. It'll be t squared minus 10t minus 9 equals 0. And that's why you're allowed to do that. It's because 0 divided by anything is 0. Now you can either complete the square or factor. Feel like that one doesn't factor though. Actually, I'm pretty sure it doesn't. Don't write this down. I'm going to do it wrong to illustrate this for you because it looks like it almost should, right? Because what multiplies to give you 9? That would add up to 10. Yeah, but if you do that, you would need them both to be negative. And why is that wrong? A negative times a negative should be a positive. Okay, so since that won't work, we're going to have to complete the square. So t squared minus 10t, leave a gap, equals 9. Actually, it gets to the point sometimes where people like this better than factoring, to be honest. Like, because you just learn the steps, you can start to churn it out. What are we going to add to both sides? 25. Plus 25 plus 25. Blank squared. What goes in the blank? T minus 5 seconds. All right, equals 34. Almost there. I'm going to have to come up here. I wrote too big. What's your next step? Good. Now, if you put plus minus, I will not mark it wrong. But we don't do negative time. So you can just do the positive one, okay? So it'll be t minus 5 equals square root of 34. And then you're going to add over the 5. Put seconds at the end. That's some number. Let's estimate. Estimating is a good skill to have. around what would square root of 34 be? Like it's close to 36, right? So like it would be a little less than 6, like 5.7, 5.8, do you see what I'm saying? Plus 5, so like 10 point something-ish. Okay, it's a good skill to have to be able to estimate. Like, hey, what is it close to? All right, and then last one, same idea. Ball gets thrown in the air, comes back down. Oh, this one's kind of interesting. It's not when is the ball on the ground. It says when is the ball what? Good. So instead of setting it equal to 0, you're going to set it equal to 22. But the very first thing that we're going to do is make it equal 0. Okay, so you set it equal to 22, but then the very first thing you're going to do is make it equal 0. Evacuate. What would that be? 17 minus 22, negative 5. Now it's exactly like the one we just did. So I want to ask you, what would you do now? Pretend it's your test. We talked about care now in here. I usually only have to talk about that with my freshmen, but do you know how a lot of times people don't care until the test is right in front of them? Like they don't really care, but then as soon as you have the test in front of you, it's like all of a sudden now I really care, but then it's too late. So you have to care now. Anyway, care now. Pretend this is your test. What would you do next? Good. Good. That is the answer I wanted to hear. Divide everything by negative 1. It'll make that t squared positive. So t squared minus 6t plus 5 equals 0. I made this one something that would factor. But could you still complete the square if you wanted? Yeah, I mean, it's up to you. But this one will split. So t times t, and then how does 5 split? Yeah, 5 and 1. And then they're both subtract. Negative 5 times negative 1 gives you positive 5. All right, so you actually do get 2 answers. What are they? Yeah, 5, and make sure you put units because it's a story problem. And then usually what I get is there can't be 2 answers. But there can, because it wasn't when does it hit the ground? It was when is it what? Yeah, so watch. I want you to actually understand what's going on. The ball goes up and comes back down. Here's the 22-foot mark. It hits that once on the way up, goes above it, and then once on the way back down. Okay. Lots of physics overlap with math. All right, and then last one, find the time when the ball hits the ground. So you're going to take that equation that's in the original problem, the one way back up here, and set it equal to 0. Now I think that one we probably will have to complete the square because that does not look, 17 is a prime number, so. But first, what would you do? Divide them all by negative 1. In all honesty, if you don't want to write divide by negative 1 on every single term, you can just make all the signs flip-flop, like it's opposite day. Yeah, that's not going to factor. It's the last one though, and I've gone over so much with you. You guys tell me what would you do next? Pretend it's your test. Oh, hold on 1 second. Go ahead. No, then I wouldn't do anything to it. I would just leave it alone. Except it will be negative because all the parabolas are going to be upside down. Because objects go up and come back down. So it will be negative. But that is a good question. If it was positive, I wouldn't do anything. I would just leave it alone. All right, what would you do first to complete the square here, guys? We're going to move the 17 over. Good. And then add 9. Good. And then what am I going to write? T minus 3 squared, good, equals 26, good. The way my brain does it when I have to add 9 is I add 10 and then just take 1 away. Okay, cool. All right, then what? Square root. T minus 3 equals, if you put plus and minus, I won't mark it wrong, but we don't do negative times. So for a story problem, you don't have to put it. And then your last step final answer is Good. I take off if you don't put the units. They're usually seconds and feet, but every once in a while I change it to yards just to make sure you read the problem. So just make sure you read the problem.